Some empaths spend half their lives believing money belongs to colder people. To the loud ones, the ruthless ones, the ones who can walk past pain without feeling it enter their bones. And somewhere deep inside, the empath begins to worship struggle like it is proof of purity. But Carl Jung once whispered through his work that what remains unconscious controls life like fate. And many empaths never notice the hidden vow living inside them. If I become powerful, I will become dangerous. That is where poverty quietly begins. An empath can read a room in seconds, feel tension before words appear, sense dishonesty behind smiles, yet still give energy away like water leaking from a cracked vessel. Because nobody taught the empath that sensitivity without boundaries becomes self-abandonment. There is a brutal lesson wealthy empaths eventually learn. People will gladly drink from a soul that never says no. And the strange thing is, the empath often helps them do it. Not because of weakness, because of guilt. Guilt for charging enough. Guilt for resting. Guilt for wanting more. Guilt for not rescuing everyone drowning around them. The empath mistakes exhaustion for kindness, until life finally corners them into silence. That silence changes everything, because when the empath stops over-explaining, stops proving goodness through sacrifice, stops trying to heal people committed to chaos, energy begins returning home, and money follows energy. Not magically, psychologically, people trust grounded energy. They pay for clarity. They invest in those who no longer vibrate desperation beneath their compassion. This is why some empaths stay broke while carrying extraordinary gifts. Their nervous system is trapped in survival, and survival cannot create abundance, can only chase relief. The brutal lesson arrives slowly. Every time the empath says yes while the soul says no, something sacred weakens. Every time intuition is ignored to avoid disappointing someone, life becomes heavier, and eventually the empath notices a terrifying pattern. The people demanding the most are often giving the least. That realization feels almost forbidden, because empaths were trained to believe love means endurance. But Jung understood something darker. The shadow forms wherever truth is suppressed, and many empaths carry a hidden shadow made of resentment, burnout, and silent rage from years of emotional overgiving. The soul cannot bloom while secretly starving, so the empath begins changing in ways others do not understand. Conversations become shorter, boundaries become cleaner, the need to save everyone disappears, and strangely, prosperity starts appearing where chaos once lived. Not because the empath became selfish, because the empath finally stopped abandoning themselves to earn belonging. There is something deeply mystical about an empath who no longer fears their own power. Their intuition sharpens, their presence deepens, their words carry weight. Even money begins responding differently, because wealth is not only financial, it is energetic permission. Permission to exist without apology, to receive without guilt, to protect peace without explanation. And the hardest lesson of all? Some people only loved the empath when access was unlimited. That truth breaks the old version of the soul, but it also frees it. The empath finally understands. Abundance was never blocked by lack of talent. It was blocked by unconscious self-sacrifice disguised as virtue. And once that illusion dies, a different life quietly begins. The empath notices something unsettling after awakening to this lesson. The more peace enters life, the more certain people begin pulling away. At first it feels painful, almost cruel. But then comes the realization Jung hinted at for years. Not every connection is rooted in love. Some are rooted in unconscious dependency. And empaths attract dependency like moonlight attracts tides. People once called the empath kind, while quietly feeding on limitless emotional access. The late-night rescuing, the unpaid healing, the endless emotional labor disguised as friendship. The empath never noticed the invisible transaction, because sensitivity often confuses being needed with being valued. But wealth enters differently. It demands discernment, and discernment feels brutal to someone raised to keep everyone comfortable. So life begins teaching through exhaustion. The empath keeps giving to those who never replenish, keeps shrinking to avoid jealousy, keeps dimming intuition so others won't feel exposed beside it. Until one morning the body itself revolts. The nervous system becomes tired of carrying entire rooms alone. And suddenly the empath understands something ancient. Burnout is sometimes the soul's final warning before transformation. This is where the old identity starts dying. The empath realizes money is deeply connected to self-worth. Not surface confidence, not motivational words, but the unconscious belief about what one is allowed to receive. Many empaths secretly believe suffering makes them spiritually superior. So life keeps offering suffering, because the unconscious always obeys identity. That is the brutal part nobody talks about. The empath does not merely fear poverty. Somewhere deep inside, the empath fears surpassing others. Fears becoming too powerful, too visible, too free. Because freedom threatens people who benefited from self-sacrifice. And when the empath finally chooses growth, guilt appears like an old ghost. Guilt for earning more. Guilt for saying no. Guilt for protecting energy instead of endlessly offering it. But guilt is not always wisdom. Sometimes guilt is just conditioning fighting for survival. The empath begins noticing how wealthy, emotionally grounded people move differently. They do not rush to save everyone. They do not explain every boundary. They do not bleed themselves dry to prove goodness. Their energy remains intact, and intact energy becomes magnetism. This changes how the empath speaks, creates, works, even rests, because exhausted energy repels abundance. People can feel survival hidden beneath the smile, but grounded energy feels safe, valuable, rare. The empath finally stops chasing validation through overgiving, and a strange silence enters life again. Not loneliness, alignment, the constant emotional noise fades. Intuition becomes cleaner, decisions sharpen, and suddenly opportunities appear that were always there, but invisible beneath emotional chaos. The empath begins attracting different people too. Not takers, not emotional vampires, but those who respect energy instead of consuming it. That alone changes destiny, because one protected empath can build what 10 exhausted versions never could. And somewhere during this transformation, another truth emerges. The empath was never meant to live small, only conditioned to. Years of absorbing fear from family, society, and wounded people created an inner prison. A silent belief that shining too brightly would make others uncomfortable. So the empath learned invisibility instead of expansion. But wealth requires visibility, not arrogance. Visibility, the willingness to be seen without apologizing for gifts. That is why this lesson feels brutal. It destroys the false morality tied to suffering. The empath finally understands. Being poor does not heal the world. Destroying the self does not make the soul holy. And perhaps the deepest realization of all, the universe never asked the empath to become smaller for others. Only wounded people did. The empath begins noticing the pattern everywhere after that awakening. The most exhausted souls are often the ones trying hardest to deserve love. So much hidden performance. So much invisible self-erasure. And for years, the empath thought survival itself was a personality. Always available, always understanding, always carrying emotional weight no one else wanted to touch. Until one quiet moment changes everything. The empath finally asks, "Who am I when I stop rescuing people?" The silence after that question feels terrifying, because many empaths built entire identities around emotional sacrifice. Without chaos to manage, there is suddenly empty space. An empty space forces truth to surface. Carl Jung believed the shadow appears wherever authenticity is abandoned. That is why many empaths secretly feel drained even while doing good. The soul knows when kindness becomes self-betrayal. And money can sense that fracture too. People speak about wealth like mathematics. But empaths eventually realize abundance responds to emotional frequency more than effort alone. A nervous system addicted to fear cannot fully receive. That is why some empaths work endlessly yet remain trapped. Their body still believes safety must be earned through suffering. So life keeps mirroring struggle. Then comes the brutal lesson again. Deeper this time, the empath notices how often they shrink around wounded people, how success is hidden to avoid triggering jealousy, how dreams are delayed so others won't feel abandoned. And slowly it becomes unbearable, because the soul was never designed to live inside constant emotional negotiation. One day the empath stops apologizing for wanting more. Not more validation, more life, more peace, more beauty, more freedom to breathe without guilt tightening the chest. And strangely, this is when intuition becomes almost supernatural. The empath can suddenly feel who drains energy before conversations even begin, can sense manipulation behind politeness, can detect scarcity hidden beneath charming words. Not paranoia, discernment, a gift that was always there beneath emotional exhaustion. The empath starts protecting mornings, protecting sleep, protecting creative energy, and outsiders mistake this transformation for coldness. But what they are really witnessing is self-respect for the first time. Because empaths who heal stop offering unlimited access. That changes everything financially. Ideas become clearer, decisions become stronger, opportunities no longer feel dangerous. The empath finally understands wealth is impossible while constantly abandoning intuition to keep others comfortable. Every ignored instinct once carried a cost. Every forced relationship drained life force. Every fake obligation stole creative energy meant for destiny. And the soul remembers all of it. This is why healed empaths often become unexpectedly successful. Not because they suddenly became greedy, because their energy stopped leaking into people committed to dysfunction. There is enormous power inside a regulated nervous system, especially for an empath. Presence sharpens, creativity deepens. People naturally trust the energy of someone no longer desperate for approval. And then another painful realization appears. Some people never wanted the empath to heal. They only wanted endless access to the empath's light. That truth cuts deeply, but it also liberates, because once the empath sees the pattern clearly, it cannot be unseen. The old version of the self begins dissolving completely. No more chasing emotionally unavailable people. No more proving worth through exhaustion. No more confusing suffering with spiritual depth. The empath finally understands something almost mystical. Abundance enters when the soul no longer worships depletion. And perhaps that is the lesson hidden beneath all the pain. The empath was never too sensitive to become wealthy, only too disconnected from their own value. There comes a final stage in the empath's transformation that feels almost unreal. A moment where the old emotional identity can no longer survive. Not because the empath becomes harder, because the empath finally becomes whole. The chaos once mistaken for passion begins losing its grip. The constant emotional rescuing no longer feels noble. Even suffering itself starts looking different. The empath sees what was hidden all along. Many people do not truly want healing. They want familiarity. And wounded familiarity will fight to keep the empath emotionally available forever. That realization changes the soul permanently. Because the empath finally understands something brutal about energy. What is tolerated becomes destiny. Every ignored boundary became an invitation. Every self-betrayal taught others how to treat the soul. Every moment of silence against intuition slowly shaped reality itself. And suddenly the empath stops asking life for permission. The nervous system softens. The mind becomes quieter. The inner world no longer feels like a battlefield crowded with everyone else's emotions. For the first time, the empath can actually hear their own voice beneath the noise. It sounds ancient, steady, almost sacred. Carl Jung believed individuation was the soul's deepest journey, the process of becoming fully oneself instead of performing survival for the world. That is exactly where abundance begins for the empath. Not in hustling harder, not in forcing positivity, but in ending the unconscious war against personal worth. The empath no longer feels guilty for resting, no longer apologizes for charging fairly, no longer shrinks brilliance to protect insecure people from discomfort. and life responds immediately because reality changes around grounded energy. People begin listening differently. Opportunities arrive with less struggle. Money flows toward clarity instead of chaos. Not every door opens, only the right ones. And strangely, the empath stops obsessing over wealth the moment inner scarcity dies. That is the paradox. Desperate energy once pushed abundance away. Peaceful energy quietly attracts it. The empath finally sees how deeply fear shaped the old life. Fear of rejection, fear of conflict, fear of abandonment, fear of being called selfish for choosing peace. But the healed empath discovers something astonishing. The world does not collapse when overgiving ends. Only unhealthy attachments do. And in the silence that follows, true life begins emerging. The empath wakes up lighter, breathes deeper, creates without exhaustion poisoning every idea. Even the body changes, because the soul was never meant to carry generations of emotional weight alone. That burden dissolves slowly now. The empath stops chasing emotionally unavailable people, stops volunteering to become everyone's safe place while neglecting the self, stops mistaking emotional pain for spiritual connection. And suddenly there is room for something new, joy without guilt. That may be the rarest form of wealth an empath can experience. Not performative happiness, not temporary escape, real peace inside the nervous system, the kind of peace that no longer needs chaos to feel alive. And at the very end of this journey, the brutal lesson reveals its true meaning. Money was never the final reward. Freedom was. Freedom from survival mode. Freedom from unconscious self-sacrifice. Freedom from confusing depletion with love. The empath becomes rich the moment energy stops being rented out to everyone else. Because that energy was always the real currency. And once the empath learns to protect it, life begins opening like a door that was never locked at all. Somewhere inside these words, perhaps a part of your soul recognized itself. If this journey spoke to the empath within you, share what lesson changed you most in the comments. And subscribe to the channel for more deep psychological insights about empaths, healing, Carl Jung, and the hidden patterns shaping your life. Thank you for watching.